All right, everybody, welcome back to the Glass Less Traveled livecast. My name is Mike Verevi. I am a certified bourbon steward and founder of the Fox Valley Whiskey Society. We're going to explore and introduce you to America's craft distilleries, microbreweries, industry insiders, and professional imbibers to give you guys the inside scoop on the things you need to be drinking. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below if you guys are watching on YouTube. You can also donate to our page to make us a little bit better and give us some feedback on patreon.com/theglasslesstraveled. Tonight we are joined by the Blum Brothers themselves, Mike and Matt Blaum. Guys, welcome to the Glass Less Travel. Thanks for coming on tonight. I see you guys are both sitting outside. It looks like it's pretty nice out there. We just had a rainstorm up here in the Aurora area, so I am again in my bedroom studio with my bourbon behind me. So thanks for coming on tonight.
Absolutely.
First, I want to talk about obviously this upcoming Friday before we start talking about the distillery and what goes on there. You guys open up on Friday, this Friday the 29th. Tell us, for those who might be making their way from the Chicagoland area, what is allowed, what is not allowed, and how excited or how cautious are you guys for opening up this Friday?
It's it's kind of weird. I mean, we don't even exactly know. I mean, we kind of know what's allowed, what's not allowed. We've been kind of prepping for this, but nice question, Mr. Whiskey Fellow.
I knew it.
Totally throws the train right off the track. Derails everything. No, we've been, trying to pay attention, but there's still a lot of unknowns. There's still a lot of gray area. There's still a lot of, things that have been said that, occupancy rates and percentages of, based on square footage, things like that. We've been, our retail shop's been open because we've been making hand sanitizer, and that's been where people can come pick up free hand sanitizer. So our retail bottle shop's been open. Now we are doing outdoor seating starting Friday, and we're actually getting our toe back in the water with tours. Actually doing tours with 9 or less people in each one.
Okay.
Counting that tour guide, he's number 10. So
yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we're excited to get open and hopefully get some money coming in the doors, because so far it's just been, it's been a standstill and spending money on hand sanitizer and still trying to fill up barrels and.
Yeah,
just it's been difficult without.
And at the same time, with things opening back up, we realize there still might be a big rush of people coming to town, and we're still pretty risk averse, when it comes to everything. So we're not the kind of establishment that's going to say, you follow the rules, but then not enforce it. So we just want everybody to have fun and stay safe.
Sure. So, obviously there's kind of mixed feelings about this, opening up, staying closed. There was an article that was just posted today that Illinois is actually the only state that's actually kind of completed all those steps to actually open up. So that's, kind of exciting, but, to be hesitant and to be, a little cautious and weary is still, kind of important to keep an eye on that, especially with all those people that are coming in from Chicago, that's, everybody's packed together like this. So, for those of you out there, listening to this, that plan on visiting this Friday, just take every precaution to keep everybody safe. Now you guys had actually posted this on on one of your social pages not too long ago, and I want to ask how this person is doing. Somebody had come in contact, or somebody had contracted COVID-19. How are they doing right now?
I don't know. We fired them on the spot, so I don't know.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, just
joking.
Like my God, Matt.
No, she ended up getting tested and was negative, which was great. It was I think everybody who knew this situation that she had been in and why we thought she might be positive, I think we all would have lost the bet on her testing that way, but she was negative. So, crisis averted, and we were able to, we just kind of closed up for a couple days. Health department didn't ask us to, we just did it. We just decided to wait and see, how it turned out, and then got back open.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that was kind of a scary, conversation to have, or something, kind of scary to find out, thinking that somebody this thing has now killed over, in the United States, over 100,000 people. Whether or not, what numbers you're looking at, but regardless, it's killed a lot of people. It's got to be a scary thing to encounter there at the distillery. Wilson Torres, he's one of our longtime listeners. Mike, he wants to know what cigar you're smoking tonight.
Hey,
Wilson Torres, never heard of him.
Who is this guy?
Somebody we should know.
This is a it's a fat blunt. No, I'm kidding. It's a Davidoff Winston Churchill late hour. It's a nice cigar tobacco that's aged in Scotch whiskey barrels. It's pretty nice.
Mike only rolls his blunts in cigar wrappers that are above $20 a stick. Just gets rid of all the tobacco, right. Fills them up.
That's right.
He's fancy.
When I run out of $100 bills to roll my blunts in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do it Richie Rich style, right? Rolling $100 bills. So let's get to let's obviously let's talk about the distillery. Tell us the Blum Brothers story. How did this whole thing start?
Well, our parents conceived us.
When a man and a woman love each other.
You see what happens.
We can get into the details of that, but I think we all...
No, please refrain from those.
So fast forward a little bit, I guess. Okay.
The story typically either goes that our great-grandfather had some secret recipe and we wanted to revive it, or it's two people who were disenchanted with their paths in life and came up with some silly story. I don't know. We both had jobs we really liked, and the thing is we always wanted to go into business together, and we have different backgrounds. Matt's got more of a business, marketing, sales type background. I have more of a technical background, and we just never had any, real Venn diagram of where our kind of interests align up until, whiskey. So once we saw other, small distilleries opening up and people with backgrounds that really weren't much different than ours, we were drunk when we decided to do it, but the liquid confidence was there, and the next day, we still kind of said, let's move forward with this. And that was April 2012 is when we drew a line in the sand, and we were open in December of 2013.
Wow. So this was really kind of what they call almost like a napkin idea, where you say, okay, let's do this thing. It's kind of just this dream that we both have. Matt, you were saying that you guys were, big whiskey guys, prior to this. And I'm always fascinated with people's stories, their genesis, if you will, this story of how the hell did these guys get into, why whiskey, right? Why, or, what was your first sip of beer or your first sip of whiskey? I remember my first sip of beer was actually in Mexico. I think I was like 13 years old. It was a Budweiser. We were sitting. My stepdad is Hispanic. My grandparents lived down in Mexico. My step grandparents lived down in Mexico. And I remember we were sitting on the porch, and I took a swig of his Budweiser, and I was 13, and I absolutely hated it. I remember my first when I first got started this affinity for whiskey and more importantly bourbon. What was kind of that aha moment where you're like, I really like this thing, this whiskey?
Well, I think oddly enough, Mike and I both, I think that's kind of why we resonate with a lot of the, the guys that enjoy our products and enjoy our distillery and story and whatnot. We were the whiskey nerds before we did a distillery. I mean, we were doing distillery tours, and Mike and I were always trading bottles around on the holidays before we got into bourbon. Usually it's kind of the opposite way, but we both, I think Mike even a little bit before me got into Scotch, and I think we both cut our teeth on kind of some of the, Scotch staples, the Macallan 12 and the Glenmorangie, and, some of the, kind of the more approachable ones. And then later on got into it a little deeper, but yeah, we're sitting here with our own distillery, and that all came from a real honest and organic place, Sure. I mean, it was just something we kind of, as Mike said, we were drunk and we decided to do it. It was when the light bulb came on that we talked, and it's like, there are other people that opened up distilleries that don't have some long background in it. They're just a couple of guys who, just quit their careers and did it. And, that kind of gave us the confidence to do it. At that point, we realized because we had gotten really nerdy with it. We had started to go to distilleries and start to understand why we liked, Buffalo Trace or Four Roses, more than, maybe a Heaven Hill bottling or whatever it might be,
Sure.
We just got nerdy about it. So.
Sure. Now, one of the things that kind of sets you guys apart, and Matt, I told you, obviously, we can't talk with the Blum Brothers without talking about this one in particular. You guys have managed to produce a bourbon. Maybe not produce. You guys have managed to sell this bourbon and create this kind of thing that is selling for astronomical amounts on the secondary market. And among many other things, Blum Brothers is known for their Nodder bourbon release. What does the future, I guess, kind of like take us through the whole Nodder bourbon story, where it came from, what the future holds for this, for, people who might still be looking for that, that dream bottle from this Galena distillery known as Blum Brothers.
Go ahead,
Well,
Mike.
I think, when we started this, we were naive a little bit in the fact that we thought, we definitely knew we wanted to go big barrel whiskey. We respect people who had been doing small barrels, but it just wasn't something we were into. And we kind of figured, vodka and gin can sustain us until our whiskey's ready. And
Sure.
We quickly realized that was not the case. So the thing is, we had become kind of disenchanted going to some of these whiskey shows, and we didn't understand why people would be deceptive and tap dance and sometimes straight out lie about, it's MGP, and we didn't get that. And we're like, well, you can be proud of it, especially when you consider a lot of brands who put it out. It may all come from MGP, but the different brands taste different, and there's a reason for that. You can do something to make it yours and to change it, and we just wanted to embrace it. We didn't want anyone to think, oh, we're making it, but we're going to kind of pretend that you know what I mean, like tap dance around answering the question. But we said, no, we're doing this. It's MGP, and we made the story, which is truthful, that this is how we learn to blend whiskey, barrel selection, blending, warehouse location selection. And ultimately that led to us having those skills when our own bourbon came about.
Sure.
So the Nodder bourbon, we really just wanted to say, hey, look, we're being honest. And at the time, Smooth Ambler's probably the only other we can think of that at the time was not trying to tap dance,
Sure.
And we just wanted to call it out. And honestly, at the time, it was still kind of taboo. That's why places were being kind of deceptive. And I think when we announced what we're labeling it as, our distributors were like, "You sure you want to do that? I mean, you're saying it's not yours. Nobody's going to want that."
Right.
And,
Right.
For
And
the
we went
first
through some of that
year
too,
or
didn't we?
two,
Yeah.
first year or two, that stuff sat on shelves collecting dust. And we had people come to the distillery and they're like, "No, I'll wait until your stuff is ready. I don't want that."
If
And,
only they knew.
At one point, those old fangled Nodder bourbon bottles that are now selling for crazy amounts were shelf turds at the beginning. I mean,
Yeah.
they really were.
It's crazy, I spoke with David Whitmer, I think this past Friday, with MGP, the master blender over there at MGP. And, I'm kind of in this, I'm very much so in the same boat that you guys are. MGP kind of has this fanboy following, where if it comes from this, this giant distillery in Indiana, that's, it's got to be good. They've got all these barrels, and David wouldn't tell us, how many barrels he was sitting on or what the oldest barrel was that he was sitting on. He goes, I know, but I'm not going to tell you. but I think being upfront and honest about it, and calling it not our bourbon, not our bourbon, right? Is being truthful in advertising. But there's also nothing to be ashamed of there either. I tell people all the time on those bourbon forums that say, do you think it's respectful that some people are distilling and they're waiting on their whiskey, and some people are out here sourcing? And I say, why is it, why does it matter? If I want to open a distillery tomorrow, that's my dream that's going to be sitting in a barrel for the next 4 years. Sure. Until then, I have to make money somehow. That's just the way business, runs.
Yeah.
And if I want to source a product, the chances are it's going to be from, MGP. So I commend you guys for doing it and being so like upfront about it and being like, listen, guys, this is an MGP product. And my God, if only people knew what they back then, what what they could have had, if they had just picked up that bottle and just sat on it for just a little bit, because it seemed like it didn't take that long. How long did that, that process take where it was like, this is the thing that we sourced from MGP to, oh my God, this is selling for hundreds of dollars.
Well, one thing we like to joke about, but it's real, even prior to that, is people kept asking, like, why do you have a 10-year-old label on it, but it's really like just about 12 years old? And
sure.
Oh, we thought it was going to sell quicker, so we ordered a bunch of labels, and we're too cheap or thrifty, as we say, to, go spend all that money on more labels. So we're like, it says 10, but it's really 11 years, 11 months, and everybody's hung on to that, and they remember what batch is what, and people ask us, and we end up having to go get on Facebook sometimes and find out what the details were, but it's kind of cool.
So being located in a small town like Galena, it's kind of hard, especially with your popularity. It's kind of hard to go anywhere without someone knowing who you guys are. Talk to us about the importance of building relationships with those local businesses in and around Galena, and what you guys have done together. Because you guys, it's what did you say? It was 3,400 people there in Galena.
Yep.
People, yeah.
So
very small. I mean, it's great for 100 people with, we get 1.5 million tourists every year.
Sure.
Except for this year.
It's a big number of people coming, except for this year.
Except for
we've had 6 so far. We've had 6 people this year. It's a small town. Everybody knows each other, but it's deceiving. We've got 40 restaurants in town.
Sure.
That's a crazy number for such a little town, but people are coming, and we know that they might be coming to Galena, to come see the Ulysses S. Grant Museum. That might be their main thing, but they're also going to go to 3 or 4 restaurants over the weekend, and the distillery, and maybe the brewery, and vice versa. They might be coming to see us, but they're going to end up at a winery and the steakhouse and different places. So, everybody attempts to work together. That doesn't always work. Other strong personalities in any small town, but we try to work with everybody, and have our product available pretty much everywhere in town here, and for the most part that's worked out really well. It's nice, all the business owners in this town, all our kids play soccer together and go to school together, and so it's overall a pretty cohesive town. It thrives on tourism, so
Sure.
We all really need to work together to keep people coming and have lots of options, so I know that today, with all now the new rules with outdoor seating and whatnot, for us it's easy. We're not on Main Street, we're just out of the downtown. We've got a big awning down the front of our building, so we have a lot of options for outdoor seating.
Sure.
Today on Main Street, a buddy of mine drove down Main Street and said that it was just an absolute mess of business owners outside putting tables,
Yep,
and planters, lights, and things. Everyone's, and hey, guess what? Friday, here they come. So everyone is getting ready for it, and we're expecting to be pretty busy this weekend. And like Mike commented on, we're cautiously optimistic and excited.
Sure.
We're really excited to have people, again, and our staff of bartenders are really excited to be able to go talk to people again and tell the story. And we're excited to get people in, but like Mike said, we're also very cautious and doing it the right way and doing it the safest way, because the last thing we want to do is do this and then take 3 steps forward and 6 steps back, because now all of a sudden we've got one of our employees has the virus and then we need to shut down. So we're trying to do it the right way.
Sure. One of the things that that we like to talk about here on the Glass House Traveled, obviously we're primarily only working with craft distilleries, microbreweries, things like that, just to kind of help spread the word. There was a study released. I think it was the Discus released it. The craft distilleries sales are down about 63%, primarily because on-premise sales are down so low. But that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to start doing this, was to really introduce people to things that they might be passing up on the on the liquor store shelf. But one of the things that I always like to talk about is the relationship between the distiller and the farmer. Now you guys are out there, out in Galena. What is the relationship that you guys have built with the farmers that you work with? Can you tell us where you get your grain from? Is it kind of one of those, the seed to spirit or the grain to glass is the big thing in craft distilling right now. Talk to us about that relationship that you guys have with the farmers that you work with to supply the grain for your spirits.
I'd say that was one of the first things we really kind of focused on and talked to some local folks who are in agriculture. And while the grains were important to us, we also forged relationships to try experimental things. We've had some people grow some ancient grain, some old open, pollinated Bloody Butcher corn, some really fun things that we could work with local farmers on. But after the first couple of years, I'd say we kind of consolidated things to work with a specific farmer who is about an hour, by truck from here. And mainly because this farmer's really into it. He's not just some guy planting and harvesting and cleaning and collecting a check.
Sure.
He's really into this stuff, really into non-GMO, no-till planting, and just really takes pride in what he does. And funny enough, he's one of the first farmers we worked with. We used to source for multiple, but now he's just so into it, and we really like the stuff we get from him that we stuck with him. And the having local grain thing, I know that sounds cliche. A lot of times, you get small distilleries saying, well, our local grain is better. And that's not what we think of when we're going for local grain. I mean, from what I remember on the Four Roses tour, they source some of their rye from Germany. Places get grain from all over based upon their specs and maybe whatever contracts they have. But we decided, for better or worse, maybe we can get better corn no, Illinois has some damn good corn. Maybe we could get better rye in, who knows, Indiana or Minnesota, right? But we want this to be an Illinois whiskey. We want it to be Illinois bourbon, and we want it to taste like the grains that grew in this climate, So that really is important to us, not just as a soundbite of, local grains are better. Yeah. It's more authentic to us that way.
Sure.
I mean, that's how it was done hundreds of years ago. They didn't, they weren't pulling grain from Germany.
Sure.
Right. And nothing wrong with that. But this is just, it kind of ties us to the local environment more.
Sure. Mm-hmm. So obviously, this being a live show, we get people that comment in all the time. If you guys do have questions for Mike or Matt here, please ask them. Just comment away either on Facebook or on YouTube. Michael asks,
we have one with Michael Wenty, I believe it is Wenty. Yes. He outdoor seating. Ours will be under the awning. On the weekends, we will actually block off 2 parking spaces. There's a handicap space and then 2 spaces there. We're going to block off those 2 and put some tables. As far as Galena, yes, last night there was a city hall meeting and they did vote to close down a giant portion of Main Street. So they're going to close up the majority of Main Street, which is about half a mile. And they will be doing outdoor seating. All the bars and restaurants will be doing outdoor seating with a lane in the middle for emergency vehicles, obviously.
Sure.
But
that's a really good
that's
idea
that's
to
why
do
they
that.
were out there today. Everyone was out there just, going crazy trying to get things set up. So
Sure. Jimmy asked, I noticed you guys mentioned corn strains, but not rye. We gotta talk about the rye here. And of course, Mr. Whiskey Fellow himself, chimed in. I heard the rye won some award. Talk about the Blum Brothers. Talk about the Blum Brothers rye. And here's Jimmy again. I think I read that from a certain fellow. Good callback, Jimmy.
So we were both, we really like rye whiskey. We like big spicy rye whiskey, and as the bourbon was kind of developing, it's turned out to be more of a full-bodied but sweeter and maybe a more delicate spirit. And we wanted to have a rye that was kind of completely different. We wanted something big and spicy and meaty and smoky. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason we don't have any corn in that mash bill. But the rye that we've used since day one is from this original farmer, and it's rye. It was a strain. He doesn't even remember what it was. It was a Canadian strain of rye that he brought in and ultimately used as a cover crop. So, we started saying, hey, we'll pay you for that cover crop, so you don't just waste it. And I think we've seen over time that our rye whiskey has this kind of smoky, tobacco-y type finish to it, and early on we thought maybe it was because we were using maybe some smoked malt, or it was this char on the barrel we did, but we eventually started making a bunch of rye that's 100% rye, and it still had that characteristic to it. So it's really cool. Like we thought about playing with different strains, but at the same time, this one is kind of pretty unique.
Sure.
In that it gives us that unique flavor profile. So, we don't make as much rye as we do bourbon, but it's become a crowd favorite, I guess. It's pretty fun.
Now, this is probably, I guess there's two ways to look at this. This is either the perfect time for experimentation, or this is not at all the time for experimentation. Do you guys have anything maybe that you've tried in the past, or that you want to try in the future, or maybe that you have kind of sitting in barrels right now that you can tell us about? Or is it just kind of one of those like, listen, we're in business mode right now. There's a crisis going on. We have no time for experimentation. Or have you guys always in the past where you're like, this is great, or this is shit?
No, we've always been into experimenting with stuff, and that's actually, we do so much of that Mike can confirm. We occasionally come across barrels that we find back in the barrel warehouse. And we go, oh yeah, remember we did that, and but I think a lot of the experimentation that we're doing, and it's not that abnormal anymore. I think 5 years ago it was pretty rare, but with our heavy Scotch influence at the beginning, right when we started distilling, we started acquiring barrels and sherry casks and Madeira casks and things like that. So, we are going to do some, some bourbon, some rye, some kind of single malt type whiskeys that are finished in different casks. And then also, Mike, you can talk about some of the experimenting just with different yeast strains and, kind of on the front side of it rather than the aging process.
Yeah, experimenting, we do it A, because it's fun, but also B, so we can learn more. Our first rye release, we did a one-time release of rye called Fever River Rye. It had a 2-year age statement on it, and that people really liked that. What they didn't know at the time was that whole batch was a way for us to experiment. So that was the combination of different rye fermentations and distillations, and we experimented with like 10 different yeast strains. They all started in new, Charta cooperage, but then we finished some in toasted wine barrels. We finished some in Madeira barrels. We finished some in all these different kinds of things. And then it doesn't usually work this way, but luckily they all kind of worked out together as far as the characteristics that we got out of it. if they hadn't, we would not have, let's say the Madeira barrels
Right.
didn't really work with the blend, we would have kept them out. But a lot of people say, before our 4-year-old rye came out, they're like, when are you going to release another batch of Fever River rye? And the answer was, hell no. Like that one would be tough to source everything we need to replicate it. And we probably didn't even make money on that product. I mean, there were so many barrels involved, and we probably made a little bit, but we're always experimenting. We have a line called Galena Reserve, which is half-size bottles that we only typically sell at the distillery, and those are all kind of experimental things, and we've never released anything we weren't really psyched about. But we've experimented with a lot of different whiskeys, but we also have done things like gin being aged in double IPA barrels and just all these wacky kinds of things. And luckily, we haven't had to dump anything out, because we're not going to put our label on it if we don't really like it. So
yeah,
we're kind of we're kind of ruthless critics. We've had a lot of things we've had in a barrel that people have come by and said, "Oh, that's ready to go. That's amazing," and we're like, it just, I think we're very, our dumb faces are on every bottle, so we have to be kind of, we're proud of what we do, and we didn't open this distillery to, just run things. This is our passion, so we're we stand behind everything we do and put in the bottle.
So Wilson Torres asks, how many barrels do you use per batch?
Well, I think we remember on one of the tours in Kentucky, one of the big producers, small batch product, they said it was like 250 barrels. And ultimately, it's not because we're trying to do it smaller, or we just only have tanks that are so big.
Mm-hmm.
So 8 barrels, eight 53-gallon barrels is our typical batch size. So sometimes it's 7, sometimes it's 9. It really depends on the blend. It may need one less or one more.
Sure.
But we big barrels and small batch for sure.
Wow. So it's funny because we talked with like I said, we talked with David Whitmer, master blender at MGP last week, and I have somewhere behind me the Rossville, and so at MGP, obviously they're the what people like to say, they're the largest distillery you've never heard of. But on the Rossville is considered, David would consider a small batch. Barrels used 159 is written on each bottle. Things like Elijah Craig could be 3, 4, 5, 6, 800 barrels. Booker's could be upwards of that many. But 8, that's, I grant you guys are a craft distillery.
And we try and point out too, it's the more barrels you have to go into a small batch, I'd say the easier it is to find consistency and keep producing a product that tastes the same bottle or batch after batch. So that's one of the reasons we spend so much time focusing on the blend. Because when you're working with 8 barrels, and barrel variation is just so wild across the spectrum, it can take weeks to come up with that next one. So if we just bottle a batch of bourbon, I'm already working on the next blend. Just have to be ahead of the game, because we never would and never have just said, oh, we need another batch. Just pull those 8 barrels down and dump them.
Sure.
It would suck. We wouldn't be happy with it.
Right.
But again, you can do that. You can do that more so if you're dumping, 500 barrels into a batch.
Sure.
I'm not saying they're not blending for consistency. They absolutely are. And they're masters at it. And we're not. We're just trying to make something, that's cool.
I think a lot of people would agree, specifically Jeff. He seems to be your biggest fan right now on YouTube. But yeah, it's a tough thing to do, especially with such 7, 8, 9 barrels to do. So hats off to you guys. We've talked with many different distillers on the blending process and what's involved in that, and we talk about the science, but we really talk about it really almost as an art form. And sitting down in a room with cup after cup after cup after cup and saying, okay, let's, mix these in certain ratios and, trying to get that same flavor profile over and over and over and over again is something that not a lot of people could do. So if I had a hat on my bald head, I would tip it to you guys. So Andrew Meyer is watching on YouTube. Andrew, hello. I will see you on the next virtual pub that we do. Hope you're doing well. Andrew is a buddy of mine that we met through the Fox Valley Whiskey Society. We do a virtual pub every now and then. He works for an airport here out in our area. He asked, you discussed how you guys have sourced your grains locally and what is common in other craft distilleries. How important is the yeast strain you use, and how was it developed?
Fantastic question. Not many people focus on the yeast.
Googled, right?
Yeah,
Google. You just Googled yeast strains, and we just picked the top 3, I think. So how we did it, right?
Right. The thing is, it all begins with the fermentation. Okay. You can't turn a bad fermentation into a good whiskey. It's just not possible. But the yeast strain also has an impact on what you're going to do with maturation. So when I talked about testing out all those different strains early on with the bourbon and the rye, different strains produce less congeners. They produce a more neutral flavor, just not as much character. And those are the kind of strains that they are commonly used in the craft spirits world, mainly because places are going to go small barrel or even big barrel, but a shorter age. If you're making a whiskey that's going to be 1 year old, 2 year old, you don't want a big in your face yeast that's going to be very congener heavy, very, very estery, because all of those things need many years to work themselves out in the barrel. So we experimented with that, and we joke about this a lot, but the yeast strain we chose, the cuts we make on the distillation being wider cuts to bring more flavors in, that's not like a marketing thing for us, but that forced us to go for a longer age. Our bourbon at 2 years old sucks. It's horrible. It was scary. It was really scary when we tasted it at 2 years, and it's like, holy shit. I hope, I hope this.
You didn't want to be in the room with Mike and I during that. It was a lot of silence and like,
Yeah. So the more congeners, it's going to take longer for all of that to esterify and create those real cool, complex, big notes in the whiskey. So we ultimately from the beginning forced ourselves to a longer age, and it's really rewarding now. So like I said, at 2, we kind of wanted to shoot ourselves in the head. At 3, it's like, it's getting a little better, but no, it's not there.
Sure.
At 4, that's right when it started being like, okay, we can take the round out of the chamber. There's hope here, and it's good and it's drinkable. But we also never just said, okay, it's drinkable, it's good at 4, so we're just going to be dumping barrels right when they hit 4. That's not the case. We now have a number of barrels that are 5 and some 6 year old barrels, and the difference between 4 and 5 years old with what we've done is really cool. Like, crazy. We're really into
black and white.
So,
yeah.
Ultimately, the other thing I like to say with the yeast strain we ultimately went with, it was reassuring because when you go to the different distilleries in Kentucky and even a lot of times in Scotland, they have this house yeast strain that they pass down through the generations and all that. And when Matt and I went on a tour at Buffalo Trace, we're on the tour and people are sitting there, listening about the fermentation. And I tap Matt, I'm like, look in the corner. And it was just pallet upon pallet of the same exact yeast strain that we chose. So we're like, okay, well, they're doing, they're using this yeast strain. It just gave us a little more confidence that you can actually, make something cool out of it. And, but it was scary early on, because yeast is important, and it definitely has an impact on what you're trying to do with the product.
Sure.
But it was also, as Mike said, it was also, it was gratifying, but also reassuring for us, because we set down this path, we said we're opening a distillery and we're doing it our way, big barrels, long age time. And like Mike said, we opened up our barrels and tried it at 2 years old and 3 years old, and we're, overwhelmingly unimpressed. And it wasn't until 4 years old and now 5 years old that we're both kind of looking at each other going, hey, it was worth it. It was worth the wait. It was worth the style of distillation, the yeast strains. And so it's kind of it's a really good feeling to be where we are right now. It's every day the juice is getting older. We're getting more and more excited.
Sure. So real quick, I want to, before I go on to the next one. So the comment on the screen right now is actually just says Facebook user. I had to go onto Facebook and look to see who it was. It's Garrett Turnquist. You guys know Garrett and John and Mike from the Sipping Social podcast. Hey, Garrett, thanks for tuning in. You go, ask them if they need more samplers for their 4, 5, and 6 year whiskey.
Absolutely,
if they do need more. I'm on that list, Garrett. I'm one above you.
And actually, our latest batch of bourbon that's out there now is the first that actually has a combination of 4, 5, and 6 year old barrels in it, and it's been across the board. It's kind of been the crowd favorite this most recent batch. So being able to delve into those older whiskeys is pretty cool.
So we've talked about your bourbon. Obviously, we talked about the Nodder bourbon, the bourbon, the rye. And here we go. Here's Andrew again. What char level do you use on your barrels? And that's actually a really good question. That's one of those ones that a lot of people want to know. You get more of these, these bourbon nerds that are coming onto social media, and they want to know more and more and more about it. Barrel science is really something that I've just recently started looking into. What char level?
Fascinating, isn't it?
It's incredible.
So the answer is 7. We only use char 7.
As burnt as burnt can be. Burnt on both inside and outside, actually.
Yes.
So the cooperage is something also. We talk about yeast and how much of an important factor that is, but the maturation is like, the king really with how this stuff turns out. And char levels, one thing we've experimented with, and I'll come back to that, but we've even experimented with delving into, with the cooperage, different profile toasts prior to a char. There's a lot of data about these toasts, and they're typically used in winemaking to target specific chemical reactions in the wood when you're toasting it, and it involves, how quickly do you ramp up to this temperature, and how long do you hold it there before you dip back down. And some of them target more of a, kind of a burnt toast flavor or a smoky flavor or a sweet flavor. So we've started from day one. We've gone through probably 10 to 12 different profiles. And then on top of that, we've experimented with char 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And something really cool, we got to experiment with our cooperage, and they did this with some of the big producers as well, is char 1 barrels post having one of these profile toasts. And the amazing thing is, once they hit 4 years old, I wouldn't have guessed this, and most people won't, you really have trouble distinguishing between this was a char 1 versus this was a char 4. So there's definitely a big impact, but it is kind of cool to see the cooperage independent stave, who supplies barrels to all the big brands who aren't under the Brown-Forman umbrella.
Sure.
Seeing them experiment and having them let us be a part of it. And even on top of that, 5 years ago, they gave us 24 barrels for free. It was a combination of, char 1 all the way through 4, but it was also an experiment where they were smoking the inside of the barrel with different types of wood prior to popping the bong on. So we get the barrel and open it, and you just get this aroma of hickory or applewood or maple. And it's so cool what you can do with these barrels. And to this day, one of our products, we still get the barrels that are heavy toast char 4, and they're finished by being smoked with maple wood. I think they're nice enough to still do that for us. They're a big company, but they still do that for us to this day. And it's just really cool. So we're never going to stop experimenting with that. I mean, sometimes we'll get like, hey, send us some heavy toast char 1 barrels. And it's just really cool to see what comes out of them.
Yeah. So
that's the fun of it all.
Jeff posted a question. So there's one up here on the screen, but Jeff posted another one. Do you use a different char level on the heads and the barrels? I know a lot of distilleries will it's kind of a mixed bag. We talked with when we talked with MGP last week. I think it was level 4 on the barrels, and then like level 2 on the heads. Is it pretty uniform all the way across for you guys, or do you use a different char level on the heads that you do on the barrels, Staves?
We've done both, but we typically only do a toast on the heads, mainly because when we're doing the profile toast on the staves, followed by a char, that's penetrating pretty deep into the wood at that point, and we don't want to really overwhelm the spirit. We still want it to pick up some of those light toasty notes from the barrel and just not be overly consumed. So across the board, we typically go with just a standard toast on the heads themselves.
So and here's Garrett again. All right, hold on. I'm gonna Garrett. He's one of the funniest guys I know. Can you actually go down Niagara Falls in a barrel?
Absolutely. I don't know how
Mike has done it 3 times.
Yeah, there are people that have done it. Jason Kleckner, can you talk about your Scotch influence?
No.
So that's we'd rather not. No, that's it's easy. Honestly, for years and years, Mike and I, prior to this, really the reason we got into distilling was our favorite Scotch, Cuddy Sark.
Oh, Cuddy Sark. I was going to say Cuddy. That's an old brand, man. Good Lord. You find old bottles of that in your grandfather's basement?
Inside joke between us and some of our employees. But we both got into Scotch before we got into bourbon. And Mike started getting really heavily into. Mike was overseas, working over in England, and was fortunate enough to be able to, kind of go do some twilight shifts and helping at places like Springbank and going to get some firsthand experience and visit these places while I was in the States bouncing around distilleries here. But Mike and I were always trading bottles of Scotch, and we're all over the board. I mean, all the different Scotch is interesting because there's so many different flavor profiles, really drastic, and a lot of people say, "Oh, do you like Scotch?" You can't like Scotch because I don't like Lefroy. And some people say Lefroy, that's Scotch.
That's a unique. That's Lefroy is on its own.
And there's some I'm not. Yeah, there's some that neither of us are giant fans of, but even Lefroy or Lagavulin has a time and a place. And that's what's really neat about Scotch is it's almost for specific, and that translates to bourbon as well. But
sure.
There are different times and places for the different types of Scotches out there, and we both got into that early, and so now we're kind of, I guess, heavily influenced by it.
And that's just it, malt whiskey like that, single malt, it's a very spirit-forward spirit, right? It's not heavily influenced on the char of the barrel, creating a lot of these flavors, and that's why, it's such a cool one to get into because, like Matt said, the spectrum of character and flavors that you can get with malt whiskey. In our opinion, is far wider than with a lot of American spirits, and it's not saying better or worse, but there's a lot more to explore early on anyway. So it was easier for us, I think, to geek out on that just because there was so much material and knowledge and so many different products and brands that are nowhere near being similar. So
sure.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about so we finished up with the Scotch influence. We talked about the bourbon, the rye. You guys also make other spirits outside of whiskey. And I'm not a vodka guy myself. I'm not a gin guy myself. I have kind of been I guess I want to say like introducing myself to them really more recently with brands like Whiskey Acres and Matt, before we got on, I talked about how Wilderness Trail sent me a bottle of their Blue Heron vodka, which is one of the best vodkas that I've ever had. Other than the whiskey side of things, other than the bourbon and the rye, what can we find out of Blum Brothers? What other spirits can we find?
Well, we've obviously, started as most craft distilleries do with the clear spirits, so we had vodka on our shelves right away. That's always the ongoing joke. Vodka keeps the lights on. So we, started with vodka, and I'll be honest with you, we're not vodka guys. You'll rarely ever see Mike and I. Rarely is even the wrong word. You'll probably never see us drinking vodka cocktails.
We're not good at selling it too. It shows, because you're like, "Oh, tell us about your vodka," and we're like, "Really?"
Yeah. I don't know.
Probably the only like vodka cocktail you'll see us drinking is a White Russian.
There you go. Yeah,
and obviously heavily dude influenced, but in what we're putting in the bottle. So we're proud of our vodka. A lot of people swear by it. We also have gin, which we're very proud of. It's more of an American contemporary style gin, a little more citrus forward. And we've gotten a lot of fans to really jump on board because of the gin. We do a barrel aged gin. We have a product called Hellfire Vodka, which we take our vodka, cut up fresh jalapenos, habaneros, and peppercorn and soak them in the vodka for about 3 days. That makes a fascinating Bloody Mary and has been a giant cult favorite. We've had a big following.
The kind of Bloody Mary that I want to drink. Yeah,
burns in, burns out. Other than that, we have like what we like to call our passion projects that are things we'll do very small amounts of, but put like all of our heart into it and do the best we can. So, a previous colleague we had, was really into absinthe, and we spent years kind of working with him and him really leveraging his expertise to make a really cool absinthe. And it's gone so far as to now we're growing 80% of the herbs that go into it out at the warehouse. So we have a whole garden full of like wormwood and pontica and hyssop and all these different herbs. And then on top of that, rum. We're both kind of geeky about rum too, especially the real estery and heavy and full flavored rum. So it spent 3 years doing R&D, really with yeasts and with distillation techniques and different raw materials to kind of develop a rum profile that we really are into. Which it's not going to be. It's not going to be, your very light-bodied, delicate rum. It's going to be pretty full flavored, and we have some of that aging away. Over 3 years old now. We haven't released that, but we do have a white rum we were actually sipping on today that we're hoping to release it for distribution later in the summer. But we were actually talking today about trying to get some out for some of these weekends that are coming in cocktails at the bars. So doing Cuba Libras and doing classic daiquiris and just so we have things like that. It's kind of, every time in between doing a month of bourbon, we'll, it's like, let's get some molasses and let's do this up. So, but those are, like I said, those are the kinds of things we kind of do when we can focus on them and really put our heart into them. And that's kind of like the malt whiskey. We bring in floor malted barley from the UK, actually. Some heavily peated, some different things. And the oldest whiskeys we have in barrels are actually malt whiskey. But people ask when those are going to be out. And the answer every time is we tuck them in the back and try and forget about them. We want them to, we want them to be on their own. And someday when it's right, we'll release it. But we never say like, all right, fiscal year 2021 is the year for malt whiskey. It's, I don't know.
Now, would you guys put an age statement on those if you, when you are to release them, would you put an age statement on those?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it depends. I mean, it's if we're gonna have some whiskeys that get closer to 10 years old and stuff. I mean, hell, why not?
Yeah, right. So we're getting a lot of questions here via YouTube. Andrew asks again, what's your favorite cocktail with whiskey and your favorite without whiskey, or maybe something that you guys even offer at the distillery?
I think
an easy cliche, easy go-to for whiskey is an old fashioned, and we make a amazing old fashioned.
Classic old fashioned, not Wisconsin old fashioned.
Yeah,
no offense.
Yeah, never with rain. Never with
classic. Also, a Sazerac is also something we're both with. With rye whiskey, Sazerac, something I really enjoy. As far as without whiskey, I don't know. We're both, I think, I'm really into rum cocktails lately, like Mike was just talking about.
Sure.
A Million's probably my favorite non-whiskey cocktail.
I think, rum wise, I think some of the coolest rums out there are some of the rum agricoles from Martinique, and our favorite cocktails, I'd say overall, are very spirit forward, because if you're into spirits, you really want to taste that, not have it covered up by everything else. Especially in the summer, one of my favorites is it's kind of the cocktail of Martinique with rum agricole. It's a tea punch. And it's literally just unaged funky rum and some lime and some sugar, and you can put ice in it or not, but it's just very cool, when you have those kind of grassy notes and those real heavy ones where you can tell it was fermented with wild yeast, and it's just kind of it can be challenging for some people who aren't into very spirit forward cocktails, but that's a really fun one in the summer.
Yeah.
Jason asked again regarding the gin. Now you guys have the barrel aged gin, which actually we did the Fox Valley Whiskey Society. We did an event with oh God, what was why can't I think of it? Well, the Walrus Room in downtown Geneva. We did an event with them through and Momentum Beverage helped us out with that one. We did a flip, but we did a rum flip. But instead of doing rum, we did a barrel aged gin. Do you guys age? We assume you do, but Jason wants to know: do you age your gin in your own barrels?
Oh yeah.
Thus far, yeah, we do. Thus far, it's been mostly it was in the Nodder barrels originally, and then also the nice thing about each batch of our barrel aged gin, we've experimented with different barrels. So each batch is actually a different barrel profile. With the first batch we had, I think bourbon barrels and Madeira casks. We had a batch with bourbon barrels, rum casks, and agave barrel. We've kind of experimented, but all bourbon barrels have all been from either our barrels or the Nodder bourbon.
Sure.
And we've really barrel aged gin's not new, but when we kind of started seeing that early on, it seemed to be kind of and rightfully so, a quick way for small producers to get another use out of the barrels they had. But it seemed to be a quick turnaround to where things were aged like 3 to 6 months. And we've wanted to find some really well extracted casks that we can just kind of let it sit in there and oxidize over time. And it's cool. Older doesn't mean better. And in some cases with gin, we've seen where it definitely doesn't mean better. But our favorite one right now, and we've had different stores like want to do it as a barrel pick, but I don't know if we'll let them because we love this barrel so much. But a full-size cognac barrel that we've had gin in for over 5 years now, and it's really cool. It barely has any color because it was so extracted.
Yeah. But
just the subtle notes and the oxidation it's had is really, really cool. And the only thing that's kind of sucked about it is the Tax and Trade Bureau has never let you say that you're aging gin in a barrel, and they won't let you put an age statement on it.
Sure.
And that rule just finally is getting overturned to where you can have an age statement. So it's going to be really fun. You have geese flying?
Don't get shit on over there. My God, be careful.
It's going to be really fun that we can come out of the gates with different, single barrel gins and actually use the damn word barrel on the label.
Sure.
And on top of that, say, oh, and it was in a barrel for 6, 7, 8 years.
Sure.
So it's a fun category.
Yeah.
But anytime we can get some kind of weird barrel, barrel brokers or saying, "Oh, we have these rum JM barrels, these agricole rums." Like, okay, give us a couple of those. Put gin in it. An old fangled barrel that was really cool. Put gin in it.
Put gin in it.
Yeah,
just throw some gin in there.
And we do that so often, we kind of lose track. I mean, just today we were shuffling barrels around, and it's like we put gin in a rye barrel. I didn't, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
So we just kind of like throwing it in there and see what happens. So it's kind of cool.
So Andrea Rhodes wants to know, for those of us who would love to support you from afar, are you guys getting an online store up eventually?
We've been getting an online store up for the past 4 years. Yes.
Yeah. But the past couple days, I've built the infrastructure. We should at this point, but I will have that up in the next few days. We're not going to start, first of all, we can't sell bottles online. We're not allowed to.
Sure.
But we are going to have some merchandise up there right now. We're just going to focus on, we've got, kind of a, actually the shirt I'm wearing, the essential AF
Yeah.
shirt. So it's got,
I like that.
Got the two of it, the logo kind of split where we've moved apart and wearing masks, hand sanitizer, that type of thing. So we're going to have this, and then also we have face masks up, and we're going to have those up, and maybe one or two other shirts and a hat or two, but we're going to kind of start, it's kind of a new thing for us, the online store, and that's going to bring a whole another level of complexity to things with getting stuff shipped out.
Sure.
And but that is coming within the next, you know what? If I sit down and watch a movie with my family, this is how we
force it, Matt.
Yeah, I know.
Matt announced to everybody when the.
I might sit and watch a movie with my family and just do it. We're this close.
Like
we're this close. Yeah. That close. It's built. I just need to hit publish.
Yeah, I know. So guys, we're up on the hour. We try not to go too long with these things, but everybody was very interactive. There was a lot of questions that I wasn't able to get to, but those are kind of like the boring questions of, like consumerism and how it's changed during the COVID-19 thing. I'd really actually just much rather talk about bourbon and whiskey. Jeff Schwartz, our buddy who the whiskey fellow, who's actually going to be on our show on June 10th. Really, really funny guy, really great to know. So we're going to learn how to get some free samples by becoming a whiskey writer.
Don't worry, on June 10th, we will be here to reciprocate and heckle the hell out of Jeff Schwartz.
Perfect. So guys, thank you so much for coming on tonight. I want to thank everybody for being so interactive on this episode. This was we had a ton of interaction tonight. Thanks to Jason and Michael and Jeff and Andrea and Andrew and everybody and Garrett. And the guys over there at Sipping Social. I was talking with Johnny last night, and I was in an episode that you guys are already on, that you are already recorded or have yet to record for the Sipping Social. I'm going to give them a shout out.
We did one.
We did one.
Yes.
I think that one. I think Johnny was saying that one's coming up soon. So for those of you guys who enjoyed to listen to the Sipping Social podcast, I know I do. I like to listen to it every new episode. Make sure to tune into that one. Thank you guys for coming on tonight. Is there anything you guys want to kind of close out with or mention? Maybe Mike, where you get that beautiful beard oil that you use, or how you get that luscious, full, gorgeous beard?
I don't know. It's just a gift. Just a gift. No fancy beard products for me.
You guys, do you guys have anything you want to close out with before we log off and we go back to drinking the brown water?
Help control the pet population. No. Spay and neuter your dogs and cats.
Thank you, Bob.
And Epstein didn't kill himself.
Guys,
that's
thanks
topical
so much
because there's some new Netflix show out now.
Yeah. Guys, thanks so much for coming on tonight. My brother-in-law just posted something on here. Hi Tim, thanks for watching tonight. Guys, thanks for coming on tonight. We're going to log off. We'll stay on and chat for a few more minutes before we carry on with the night. Everybody out there that watched us tonight, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to be back next week with some pretty exciting episodes. We got the Whiskey Fellow coming on, Jeff Schwartz coming on the 10th. So everybody, cheers, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for having us.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah. Thank you.